Okay, we can start. I suggest to start this session. So it's a sort of working session. I am sorry about that. There is a clear objective, at least for me. We are developing a scoreboard. It's already 3 years we have this scoreboard. We publicize this scoreboard. And we have the opportunity in the next ODYSSEE-MURE project to improve it. So we are interested by the point of view of evaluators, possible users and evaluators. If you find some limit critics, so we will maybe take on board your ideas and solutions in improving the scoreboard. So this is why it's not only listening. I hope you will participate and give us some input. And I think 2 or 3 of you are participating to the project. So there are some other witness than me, about some solution. So the title, it's there are several scoreboards on efficiency. I have selected 2, which are considering as the best practice at world or European level. And the first presentation will be on methodology, how we really make this scoreboard. And I have to go to details because this is at this level that you can really understand the methodology and you can criticize or not. After this, so this is the agenda I propose. Presenting this the 2 scoreboards, then a round table discussing about the methodologies. Second, then we will have a voting procedure. I will ask you from this scoreboard, we have winners, which is the most efficient country on efficiency at world and European level. So you will vote to see if experts as you are good enough to, or if you consider the scoreboard doesn't really show the reality. And then I will present the results, so which will be the winner. And we will have a second round table about how to communicate such kind of scoreboard. Because you know that every scoreboard, there are it's criticized, and there are sometimes good reasons to be criticized, and it's difficult to communicate. And I will explain the story later on. Okay, starting. There are many scoreboards. You know the scoreboard of University of Shanghai. You know you have a scoreboard for school, for hospital. Why we don't have a scoreboard on efficiency? It was a question we have 3 years ago. And this is the idea to set up a scoreboard on efficiency. And there are on your side some attempt on energy efficiency scoreboard. You have IEEE, we try to do it. The oldest one is the first one, the ACEEE International Energy Efficiency Scoreboard. And there is Arab League, which have also a scoreboard. In India, they have the Indian dashboard by state, etc. And so you see some ideas, some example of scoreboard. And we more or less, we rank them according to their interest, and we select the 2 first ones. So why we need to have I will not insist too much on that, but why we need a scoreboard? It's a way to exchange on policies, to raise the profile of efficiency. It's increase the transparency because the scoreboard is based on sound quantitative evaluation. So this is why I think this audience is interesting. It's a way to communicate and to easily promote policies. And the scoreboard we did for Europe has the interest to merge the philosophy behind our scoreboard. Is to take into account what is the past experience. So we have energy efficiency trend indicators. What is the current situation? This is the level of indicators. And the future, which is represented by the level of policy which are implemented. So we consider that the policy which are implemented now will be will let's say, face or design the result of the future. So this is one philosophical idea behind our scoreboard. And we have 3 scoreboard that we merge in a unique scoreboard to avoid confusion. Because I can give you a scoreboard for the country which has the best level of performance, or the best past achievement, or the best policy impact. And of course, depending on the scoreboard, you have different country ranking. So we have selected 2 scoreboards, the ACEEE, which covers the 23 top countries. So you have US, Japan, etc. So it's a worldwide scoreboard, but it includes only the most important consuming countries. So you may not find Denmark, for instance. And you have the European scoreboard, ODYSSEE-MURE, which cover 20 EU countries plus UK, Norway, Serbia. And besides that, we have 200 energy efficiency indicators, I call metrics, and 2,500 policies. For the ACEEE scoreboard, the data collection is based on international, let's say, source of information like IEEE, World Bank, etc. So I will start rapidly with the ACEEE scoreboard. They have 30 metrics, 30 indicators, which combine both indicators and policy implementation. And they give points according to each of the metrics, but the weight, each metric has a different point. For instance, a building code will have 4 points, and a voluntary agreement will have only 2 points because they consider the impact is less important. So it's cover national efforts, like, for example, energy intensity will be one of the metrics. And industry, for instance, they will check if you have mandatory audits. So I will go very rapidly. National effort, it's change in intensity, some spending on efficiency, tax credit and loan program. So what all horizontal program. And you can see that they give metrics. So the total of this metric is 25, okay? And they give more impact to the change in energy intensity. Take into account this is one of the discussion we may have about the reference. So it's 5 years from 2013, 2018. This is the result of the 2022 scoreboard. So it's very recent publication. And so you see spending on R&D, etc. For transportation, so it's something that you really know already. So it's a consumption for cars, for light-duty vehicles, share of electric vehicles. So you see that the share of electric vehicle at the same point that's the level of the consumption of light-duty vehicles. So this is their responsibility, but the idea is they have different metrics and they weight or they give an impact of number of each metrics, as you can see, and you can discuss for life. Smart freight initiative, they give only 1. Okay, so I will go rapidly for buildings. A standard for, so it seems, let's say, normal that they give more points to standards than label, because they consider that a standard has a more impact on efficiency than labels. Building retrofit performance 4, etc. And energy intensity in commercial building, only 3. So I will not, you see, labeling, they give, you see, they give 5 for a standard, and they give 2 for labeling. So, of course, if you are promoting labeling for all your life, you disagree with this ranking. But, yes. If you can speak slowly and
Yes.
okay.
So I'm Robert Harmsen from Utrecht University. But my question is actually, so if I do the count, it's 25.
Yes.
But whatever the performance is, always 25 points are granted.
The total.
Always. So it's not.
No. I mean, this is the maximum you can get. For example, if you don't have label, you don't have 2 points.
Oh, okay.
Do you understand? This is a theoretical matrix.
Yeah, I see. So this is not a score. This is the maximum points.
They check if you have a standard, you will have 5. If you have a label, no label, you don't have 2. Okay. Then, so there are some comments. Of course, they base their numbering about practice and exchange between experts. And one important thing is energy intensity, for example, is on building is climatic corrected. Of course, if you are a country in Scandinavia compared to Mediterranean countries, it makes a difference. So they try to make some adjustment in order to make the comparison fairer. For industry, what is interesting, it's what is important for the performance, they use the energy intensity. They don't use physical indicator like TOE per tons of cement or TOE per tons of paper. So they just use energy intensity, it means TOE per GDP or value added, etc. Yeah, please. We can do like that. Oh, you have a high voice, man.
I do. So Lea Günther from Motiva Finland. I just wanted to ask, what does energy intensity mean at the residential sector? Because there was also the energy intensity, or does it mean specific consumption?
I think it's energy intensity, like TOE per what we call income.
Per income. Okay.
Per income.
Household income.
Yes,
okay.
yes. But I am not the father of that scoreboard, so I cannot answer to all the technical questions. I think I just want to show you the principle. And for instance, you see that for voluntary agreement, they seem to like voluntary agreement. They put 4. Personally, I will not put 4 for voluntary agreement. Lea will put 10. And mandatory energy audits for me, and I agree with them, an audit doesn't provide savings. So I will put 2. So you can have a 1-year discussion about but the idea is they don't count each policy, 1 for building code, 1 for audit. So they make an effort to weight the theoretical impact of each policies. Okay. And so you see there are some adjustment about structural change. So you see this is per industrial GDP. And they get some info. I think they're waiting. It's due to some research, academic research, or some report on their assessment. So it's a sort of they have a group and discuss what will be the score for each type of policies. And you may understand, I think we'll not open the discussion about why they put 5 for a voluntary agreement and 2 for audit. It's just to show you how it works. So, in fact, they don't have physical indicators, as I mentioned, and they don't have, of course, all the data for all the country. Because in this high-consuming country, you have India, for instance, you have China, which are not able to provide all this set of data. And of course, it's national data. So if you take countries like Italy, where you have at least more regional policies and national policy, it doesn't reflect the total, let's say, effort on energy efficiency policy. So it's mainly a scoreboard on national policies. Okay, so they propose some improvement. You will see that, for instance, they don't take, and this is difficult to take, if you have an advertising campaign, the impact it's 6 months. if you have a building code, it could be 100 years. So they don't take into account in their assessment, or they take into account only on a qualitative way. But of course, an energy audit has an impact for, let's say, a few years compared to some standards which have maybe 5 or 10 years impact.
Didier?
Yes.
On that, I mean, if something has an impact, an ongoing impact, then it will be reflected in some of the other performance metrics in future years, right? So,
but they don't take into account that.
But they will do in the next years.
Next year, yes, we can say, because they do it effectively yearly.
Yeah.
So they have a.
And just to answer your question, they with the energy intensity in the residential sector, they look at 2 metrics. One is per meter squared, and another is per capita, and then they make some judgment about what score they get out of 3 or 4 or whatever it is, based on the combination of those 2 metrics.
The thing is, the word energy intensity is misleading. For certain cases, it's an economic ratio, like in industry, where they divide the consumption by the value added. For me, energy intensity, it's only consumption divided by a macroeconomic indicators like GDP or value added. But for the Americans, liter per 100 kilometer was energy intensity. So I was wrong to answer to your question.
And sorry, it's also climate corrected. Can I make a point though about the
please.
the ACEEE scorecard?
What do you want?
It seems like it feels like it's slightly prejudiced by some preconceptions about what's important, which may or may not be true, but there are some value judgments, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, that's almost bound to be the case with any scorecard, because it's not purely, you're always making a judgment about how to weight quantitative metrics. But it seems like, because in the US, right, you have the federal system, and then you have policies that happen at a state level. They have this national thing, which is essentially proxying for federal programs. But perhaps in other countries, it doesn't quite work in that way. So having 25, a quarter of the marks for this cross-cutting category might not be appropriate. That would be one point to make. And then just on the sectors themselves. So on buildings, there are 25 points. 16 of the points were for policy and 9 for performance. Okay. And then in industry, it's also 16 and 9. So you say at least they're being consistent. But in transport, it's 12, 13, I think.
Because there are less policies.
Well, but in industry, you could argue that policy is less important and performance is more important.
So you start the round table, or of course, already. This is a
oh, sorry, is this the question in the round table? Okay, but I just, so I make these points because I was asked to review the ACEEE scorecard before they published it last time. And I was making some of these points. They just seem to be, which is why I think I prefer the ODYSSEE-MURE. I'm just trying to suck up to you, Didier, here, but I think I prefer the ODYSSEE-MURE, just of having a third, you know, for your categories.
Okay, so you see the principle. At least they try to combine energy performances and policy implementation. And of course, if you are a pure researcher like some of you here, you may criticize this scoreboard, but this exists. It's already a good attempt to do that. So now I go to a second scoreboard. The scope, it's only to European countries. The advantage is that we have more data in Europe than in some of the ACEEE things. So we can take more advantage of this data collection using more metrics, and we can use more physical indicators. So the data are decentralized. It's not data that I will get from Eurostat or rates. For example, our friend Jos do for Netherlands, Lea for, but she's on MURE. She's not on Odyssey. You are also Odyssey? Both, good. Okay. So the idea is to compare country, and we try to have let's say, to really take into account the real impact, especially on policies. This is the value added of our scoreboard. I say, yes, I can say our scoreboard compared to ACEEE. And we have the cooperation of ECEEE in order to promote this scoreboard. So how it works, we have three main scoreboard or criteria, I may say. One, which is the achieved level. For example, we compare the liter per 100 kilometer for cars for all countries. The country which have the highest or the lowest consumption will get 1, and so he has the highest score, and we rank the country according to that. Secondly, we have a second criteria on progress. And we take 2000, the progress is measured in the period 2010, 2020 or 21, according to, depending on the year of the scoreboard. So our progress, it's based on a longer period than ACEEE, for instance. And then we have the EU policy, where we try to evaluate the impact of policy. And then we have these three separate or single scoreboard, and we make an overall scoreboard which combines these three scoreboard. So the score level, it's quite, it takes, the score level answer to the question, how my country currently perform with respect to efficiency. So we have a set of metrics, and I will not go in details for all these metrics, but let's say kilowatt per refrigerator, and we take the performance of 2020 as a metrics for the score level for refrigerator. We do that for cars, for trucks, for cement, etc. So it's a very disaggregated approach, and then we reaggregate that in one score for the level. So we have physical indicators, this is important, and we try to adjust from climatic correction or structure of the industry. For example, energy use per square meter, share of public transportation, or specific consumption. What we call specific consumption, it's TOE per tons of cement per industrial branches. Unfortunately, we don't have such type of indicator for other branches, but we do our best. The trend, it's more to see the progress, and the question is, which is a good reference? Because as you know, efficiency, except in crisis, goes slowly and slowly. So what we have to monitor every year is a change of 1% or even less. So if you really want to see what's happened in efficiency, I always say we should have a long-term past views. But it's a political choice, because if you take a short period, longer period, you advantage, let's say, Germany, France, and so on. And if you take a shorter period, you take more, the problem is Eastern countries have, let's say, 5% improvement every year, because they start to implement efficiency, let's say, in the late 90s, compared to, let's say, Germany or France from after the oil shock, first oil shock. So, of course, it's easier for Poland and, I don't know, Croatia to have a better recent trends than France and Italy. So, depending on the length of the period, you may advantage one category of country compared to another one. So to have a sort of medium, let's say, view, we take 10, sorry. The way we calculate, it's we use, I will not go in, I think this is something you can accept. We use the OECD composite indicator methodologies, which help us to calculate the number of the performance of each country. The best way, I will show you an example. So you have, I think it's real data. You have here GOE per passenger kilometer for different countries. So we take the best country, it's Cyprus. So you get a maximum score 74, 64. It's not a score here, it's a performance indicator. And the worst, it's, I don't know which country is it, it's Romania. And applying this, methodology, if we take the case of Austria, which is 0.05, they get 0.33 point. The maximum it will be 1, and Austria has 1.33. So I think you have nothing to discuss on that. It's a classic composite indicators. So it's how it works. For the, so it's what I say, and we do that by sectors and by end users. So
I think we can make a point on it, actually. We can say that's a really good way of doing it. If you look at the ACEEE scorecard, it's out of some marking scheme, and it does the gaps between the countries don't necessarily represent the gaps between the scores they get out of 6, because here you can go down to however many decimal places you want. It's very much more judgment based in the ACEEE one. So like if you look on the progress indicator, I was looking at the ACEEE scorecard. China, I think, made something like a 22% increase,
so they will get,
and they get 6 out of 6. But then the next one is something like 10%. It's much less, but they get 5. So whereas on this scorecard, China on the progress indicator would score loads higher than everyone else, which I think is better. This is much your. But
it's happened also better. In this European score. It's clear that Romania, you will see the winners. There will be some winners from eastern part, which is not obvious for us. To say that Romania could be a winner, you maybe not share that point of view. So, okay. And how we do, one of the difference is for this metric, we are very detailed. So for transport, cars, bus, motorcycle, and it works like that. You see, you remember 0.33 point for cars. We do the same for trucks, and we weight each of these points by their share in the consumption. So this is how we get the score for transport. And then we have the same techniques for gathering, transport, household, etc. So it's always weighted by the consumption. You are in a good mood, Sam, today.
Clarification question rather than a point, rather than a panel question. So what about switching modes? Do you count that as, so if the percentages shift?
It's part of the metrics. We have data on the share of public transportation, so it could be accounted for in the matrix. We go modes by modes, so it's not taking into account in the matrix, but it's taken into account as a policy. So you have the list of indicators for services. I will not go in detail. It's what you have to understand is by end use or by technologies, not general indicators. You see, we have an indicator for heating, for thermal, per appliances, etc. For transport, we have a different indicator for cars, truck, light truck, air, modal split, for example, share of traffic for public modes, and so on. Okay, indicator, what is important, it's to understand that it's corrected from structure. It takes some, yes. We have the ODEX, it's an indicator of physical indicators on industry. And we have also indicator for the level adjusted from the structural change. So it's one of the adjustments that ACEEE doesn't. I don't want to compare. It's just to show what is interest of Odyssey. It's we take into account as we can the structural change, and we have a lot of discussion, for example, with Léa, because to make an adjustment of structural change. The fact that you have, let's say, more paper industry rather than chemical or than electronics, it works when you don't have a very specific structure of industry. When you have, I don't know, 60 or 70% of your value added, which is due to one sector, especially an intensive sector, you can make any correction you like. It's difficult to do that. Okay, now the most, let's say, discutable or interesting to discuss, especially with policy evaluators, it's how we evaluate the impact of policies. So the question is, what will be the future impact of our policies? And I can be very fast saying that in the ODYSSEE-MURE, in the MURE database, we ask all the countries to provide their ex-post evaluation when they have. We have around 2,500 policies, and more than 1/3 of that have some ex-post evaluation. So in that case, we take that evaluation as a quantitative impact of the policy. We also, in case that we don't have ex-post policy, we ask semi-quantitative evaluation. So there is a threshold. If this policy is more affect more than 1% of the consumption, we consider it's a high-level policy. For example, the white certificate in France can be considered as high-impact policy. I suppose that you have ranked voluntary agreement in Finland as a high-impact policy. So this is a semi-quantitative because it's more expert judgment, but it's based on the fact that there are some evaluation somewhere, and we consider that the impact of the policy is below a certain threshold. So we say low policy, medium, and high policy. So this is more or less what is mentioned here. And then, so you have here quantitative impact, we have semi-quantitative impact, and because you are the master of evaluation, there is some coefficient taking into account some interaction between policies. So there is, you have two policies, let's say, which have a certain impact. If they interact, some cases they have some percentage higher because two policies may have a synergy, or in some cases there are some overlap of policy and they reduce the impact of policy. I think I don't remember exactly the percentage. So you see, for example, the case of Germany. It's based mainly also on the reporting on NECPs. And why it's interesting? Because the NECPs provide the impact of policies provided by the government. So it's I don't say it's, at least it's an official assessment. So you can criticize what will be the evaluation of building codes by the federal government of Germany. You can criticize that, but at least it's an official sources, which is commented by the Commission and so on. Okay, so, and I know that some of you here has, let's say, evaluated the quality of this NECPs or NIP. And I see your smile, but at least it's official data, and this is important for the legitimacy of our scoreboard. It's not our own expertise, it's also based on, as much as we can, on official data, including for the indicators. So you see how it works. So remember 55. Okay, so you have different bottom-up evaluation, and the total for Germany is 55. And then they have another sector. They add, this was quantitative ex-post evaluation. Then they add semi-quantitative impact evaluation. And the total, it's 23. And they make this interaction factor, so you cannot see here, but there is a discounting rate. It's here. But it's more than, let's say, 4%. So it's interaction factor, assuming 1% loss of impact at each interaction. So, for example, there is an interaction between labels and standard, for instance. So this is, in fact, we have an exercise before in a previous Odyssey with Peter Boonkamp, which was a master of interaction. We propose a matrix based on and this part of this study that we take into account here. So this is the idea. You have real ex post evaluation, you have semi-quantitative evaluation, and there is some coefficient of taking into account interaction, and then you provide a total amount of energy savings. I just finished this scoreboard, and then we weight the scoreboard of each of them. So the first scoreboard on trains account for 33%, etc. And we have a long discussion among the group about this weighting. And this is still questionable. Every time you have a weighting, you can have a 10 years discussion, which will be the things. So it's where we are. I propose the following question. For the indicator scoreboard, I think this is less questionable, of course, than the policy impact evaluation. But there are still some questions. What is the right indicator for cars? It's the same question I posed before. Is it gram oil equivalent per passenger kilometer, liter per 100 kilometer, or liter per kilograms of cars? So we select one indicator, and you can spend all our life to discuss which is the right indicator. We take the preferred list of the European Commission as a reference. Then you have the problem of the reference year. Do we take 2010-2020, or before we use 2000-2020? We use the 3 years moving average, which is a classic in statistics, in order to smooth the past trend, because you have sometimes some erratic situation. We take the 3, and you have also correction every year on the energy balance. So the energy balance, it's final after 3 years. So this is why we take this 3 years average to smooth the result of the trend. We have some adjustment on economy, the share of GDP, the share climatic correction, and sometimes national specificities. One of the questions, there is an issue about, for example, for space heating, theory per square meter. What will be the best country score for that? It's Romania. Why? Because their indoor temperature in the winter, it's 15, or Bulgaria. There are so many fuel poor people that if we take only that indicator, they are the winner in space heating. So, of course, it's after climatic correction. So there is an issue. We are here using, let's say, energy efficiency indicator. We are not using sufficiency indicator. We take into account, for example, the difference in indoor temperature. Same for mileage, etc. And what we can discuss is the weighting procedure according to share of consumption. So this is the first set of questions. The second set will be on policy scoreboard, but I suggest that if you have any comments on the first type of question, so I don't know if we arrange a round table here, we can do like that. So if you have a comment or suggestion or something that you like or don't like on this indicator scoreboard. And Stéphane, of course, you can, I don't know if you are here, Stéphane?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so since you are outside, do you have, you will be the first one. Do you have any comment or reaction on the two scoreboard on indicators, how we can improve it, or what is your views if our weighting procedure is correct, or if you have any comment on that?
Well, yeah, first of all, yeah, let me say it's a pity that I can't be with you in person these days, because after more than 1 year of preparing this conference in the board and the program committee, it's really sad, but it's good that I can contribute in this way. Yeah, please excuse my low voice, which is also due to the sickness that prevented me from traveling to Paris. About the indicators in the ODYSSEE-MURE scoreboard, I think what you presented sounds overall quite reasonable. About sufficiency, you could include the square meter of residential and non-residential buildings per capita. Although when we did this study for ECEEE, we noticed that this is also not very reliable, because all the Mediterranean countries with lots of holiday residences, they sometimes have unexpectedly high square meters per person, which are not due to the domestic population, but due to tourism.
Oh.
So, but in general, this is an indicator for sufficiency in the use of buildings. For the transport sector, I think the modal shares and their change already cover most of the sufficiency potential. Yeah. About the weighting procedures based on the share of consumption seems reasonable to me. The period of reference for the trends, yeah, it's I don't have a clear picture on that. So yeah, that would be the little I would have to say on the indicators.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have comments on the indicator part? Ladies first. So it's Leah.
Yes. About the choice of indicators between these two different scorecards, in my view, the Odyssey is bit more balanced, and particularly because it is using the physical indicators. The more we are using the economic indicators, there are lots of external factors that we count in, and at the end it is what a square meter is consuming, or what a person in a car or the car is consuming. So rather than intensity. So in that sense, I think that the approach in the Odyssey scoreboard is more robust. You expressed the question of the time period very balanced way, that what happens so when you take a longer time span, then you the early actors benefit, but on the other hand, we should also credit those who are working very hard over the last years to catch up. So it is indeed a political question with what we want to show. But again, a little bit back to the choice of indicators. I think that all in all, they are best in these two sectors, residential and transport, where they indeed are very physical. The industry sector is more problematic with these intensities. And the service sector, where there is mainly this energy per employees, it's really difficult, because what would be the policy implication? Increase the number of employees. so it's a very difficult indicator. Then I noticed on the ECEE scoreboard some indicators which were interesting. They were more like emphasizing action, listing different measures which are being taken in the Odyssey scoreboard. The approach is a bit different, but then I was thinking about some others which are not listed here at all, like for example the use of waste heat, sector integration point of view, like how much waste heat is utilized, and that is not visible anywhere in either of these these scoreboards, and whether there should be some indicators for that kind of policies. They perhaps are more the type which we can find in the ECEE scoreboard, but
maybe it could be taken into account in the policy. For example, if you have subsidies for cogeneration, in one part, it's this type of policy are taking. We don't have a metrics on cogeneration in as an indicator share of cogeneration, but it could be integrated in the policy if there is a subsidies. For the service sector, there is data limitation because we have the same set of data for all countries. We have, for instance, the possibility to have the consumption of services by branch. So I can have a dedicated indicator for a school, number of students instead of square meter, for hospital, number of beds or number of dead people, hotel, number of nights, etc. So we have this set of indicators, but it doesn't exist for, I think only 1/3 of the country can provide the consumption by branch. So we know that there are better indicators, more specific indicator by branch, but unfortunately we don't have. And in fact, when we work at aggregate level, we have 2 indicators per square meter or per employee. And the debate could be if we have to select one, which one we will take it. So this is, for me, the debate is between employee and square meter in the service sector.
Yeah. But at the same time, the service sector is trying to make its operations as efficient as possible, and they are rather decreasing the number of employees than increasing it, and using technologies which of course consume energy. But it's kind of a more structural effect than energy efficiency.
In fact, there is why we consider employment as a possible good driver. It's, as you mentioned, there is a link between the energy productivity, the electricity consumption, and the labor productivity. So this is why using employment in that respect, we answer to your question, taking into account that we use video instead of going by cars. But in the service sector, we use email instead of, so we use more electricity, but we increase our productivity. So this is why there are research showing there is a sort of econometric relationship between the level of electricity use and the number of employment. So you are true, but it's more complicated than that because the level of employment is increasing in services, because the share of services is increasing in the total GDP. So there are more employment for service, but their productivity is improving, in particular using electricity. But okay, I got the point. It's possible for some countries, but unfortunately not for all countries.
Yeah, just one little specification, then I asked. So just regarding the waste heat utilization, I was not actually referring to the use of CHP. I was referring to the waste heat coming from industries, from supermarkets, data centers, and so on. So the recycling of that heat is not counted really anywhere, and it could be as one indicator. We are not covering the the energy transformation sector that much. So I'm not proposing anything for CHP, but this kind of end-use efficiency.
Cogeneration, sometimes there are discussion. We have a lot of discussion to say if it's in industry or if it's part of the transformation sector. So, but it's more a discussion on indicators and on the score. The issue on the scoreboard, it's which indicator we will use. But if this, this is a possible indicator that we will add in the scoreboard, but first we have to develop it in the Odyssey database. And I'm sure you will advocate on that. Some other remarks? Please. Yes, please.
Yes, actually, I have a question on the weighing, because you addressed the fact that the time period considered is an issue. But I was actually wondering if you are a country which already has very good performance in terms of efficiency, whether the trend indicator still makes a lot of sense, because ultimately, if you have the highest efficiency indicator you can get, well, the trend will show a flat line, I would say.
So you will be, of course, if let's take the case of a country which has a long-lasting experience. So in principle, their level of consumption will be lower in principle. So they will rank at the top of the scoreboard. But on the opposite, they will be at the bottom for the trend. Because if you are good in level, it will be more difficult to be good in trend. So this is why we have two different scoreboards to take into account the dynamic and the situation. Also the issue, it's the targets are generally mentioned in terms of rate of improvement. For example, let's say Tunisia, their target is 3% improvement of efficiency. So this is an idea of having a trend. And you never see a target, a sectoral target. The car should consume 5 liters in Mexico in 2030. So this is why we have a combination taking into account past trend, because this is also a way how the targets are defined. And certainly what it's account for a pragmatic guy like me, it's the level. I don't care if you have been good in the past or not. What is important for me is the situation. So if you ask me what will be my weighting, it will be not the same for trends and level. It will be level.
Yeah. So the level is the ultimate you go for. But if you score the ultimate for the level, then why should you be penalized for a flat trend? So then at that point you.
But we have two different scores. We have one scored on trend and one scored on level.
Yeah. Okay. My other question is also about the three factors. So I'm wondering whether the trend and the policy are not basically mimicking the same thing, because if your trend is upwards, then it can be, of course, from autonomous improvement, but
there are many reasons. You have, and Stéphane Thomas know very well, and I think you were also in IMES, there are the trends, they are affected by policies. There are other policies which may play in the same direction, but can play in the other direction. You have autonomous progress, you have an international energy price. So you have many drivers of the resultant of efficiency. And what we show by the past trend is the resultant. This is the advantage of the top-down evaluation. It's what we measure. It's the resultant of everything, including efficiency policy, but including all other factors. So this is something, if you are a BU bottom-up evaluator, you are not maybe familiar with top-down, but the advantage, there are other disadvantages, but the advantage of top-down is we measure the resultant. of all the drivers. It's not only policy-driven, the performance. I think there is a...
Yeah. Yasmin Said, work at Swedish Energy Agency. And actually, when I look at these two scoreboards, it's like, it looks like this one is more, I mean, valid in a way that using this weighting factor and the way the method is applied. But of course, I mean, I haven't used these databases for any specific evaluation or analytical purpose. So for me, it's not that easy to compare. What I was wondering about, like different countries has their different kind of energy efficiency targets, energy efficiency performance. For example, in Sweden, we have energy efficiency target. It's in relative term, like total energy use per unit of GDP. It's not in absolute term. So then it could be sometimes misleading when comparing among countries. It also depends on the basic databases, how the data is collected.
It's collected by STEM. So if you complain about Swedish data, you complain to your colleagues.
No, I'm not complaining. No. It's not like I'm complaining. It's like it could look different depending on like what the country has its own energy efficiency targets and how do they measure. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand more or less your point. I have no answer to that. It's a scoreboard, so you. In fact, I don't understand your point in the fact that we have the indicator for the past are not related with your target. So, I mean, what we are measuring with the first scoreboard on trend, it's the past achievement, whatever will be your target. So if your target is on efficiency, on saving, on final demand or energy demand or in energy saving terms, it's not related with the way we evaluate the past trend. So this is why I don't understand exactly your point, but okay, we have to go ahead. Sam, you want to say?
Well, just on
last comment on indicators, because we have other things to.
So coming to your point, I think it's good having like an Olympics, right? So you've got different winners for different events, and I like the levels and I like the progress. And when you're talking about progress, I think it's fine that Romania, whoever it is, wins. And maybe that's surprising. I don't know, but probably people from Eastern Europe may be comparing themselves against other countries in Eastern Europe because they're in similar positions of catching up on energy efficiency. So I think that's all fine. And on that point, I like a shorter period because it's more relevant politically, I think, how much progress you've made over a relatively short period of time, because then it's more relevant to the people that are likely to be in power at the time. And then just a point on the transport one again. So with modal shift, I know you said you put that into the policy bundle, but
both. In fact, it's both.
But I'd like it to be in the performance bundle because the end use is passenger kilometers, not passenger kilometers in a car, passenger kilometers in a bus, passenger kilometers in some other form of transport. So if you can do lots more travel by bicycle, and obviously you're not counting the extra calories you have to eat, but if you're capturing the modal shift within passenger kilometers, isn't that a better metric than the individual transport forms?
Take the total passenger, the gram oil equivalent per passenger kilometer in total, you take into account the transport modal shift. So if we are working at the level of each mode, this effect disappears. Or it's not because you use yes, it's affect also at detail level. So in fact, for me, if you work at detail level, cars, bus, etc., it take already into account the modal shift impact.
I have something to add, if I may. It's a question if you consider modal shift as efficiency or structural change.
Or even efficiency policy or transport policy. Because
Yes.
if we develop speed train in France, it's not for efficiency, it's for other purpose. So this is always a speed limit. Is it efficiency policy or a safety policy? Okay, so now next question for the policy scoreboard. What I suggest, so for your short period, how long you consider short period, 10 years or 5 years? If you are the coordinator of Odyssey, you will take 5 years, suggest 5 years or 10 years?
I'd take the shortest period over which you can get a robust estimate.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I suggest we shift to policy scoreboard. Do you have any comment or suggestion?
Yes, but
Stefan, please.
yeah, may I? Yeah, I suggest we discuss policies and overall together now, for reasons of time. I'd like to start with the overall scoreboard. Here I disagree with Sam and maybe also Robert that I like the higher weight of the policies in the ACEEE scoreboard, and I would like to see, let's say, maybe half and half for the trends and levels, so which again could be 1/4 each, and half for the policies. Also, however, as I understood it in what you presented, the policies, you so far measured the impact in 2020, mostly ex post. So it is, of course, then consistent with the trends, but it measures the past. But now we're in 22, and I think we should look at what our country is doing now to achieve the 2030 targets. And so I support your suggestion to go to 2030. And so this policy part would actually, measure the effectiveness or ambition of the current policies. And of course, then you would have to rely more on the ex ante estimates, which you can find in the NECPs, or your national partners can include them. Because the NECPs is only every few years, and there's a lot of movement in one or the other direction. Of course, for instance, the German government this year has issued a climate protection emergency program for the building sector, which they expect to more than double the savings they will achieve over the next 10 years. So that's something that maybe the national partners then can provide, but also judge if that is a reasonable estimate that they are making. That was my two major comments on the overall scoreboard and the policies.
Thank you, Stefan, because they are very valuable. In fact, personally, I have proposed, same as you, 50% for policies and 50% for the two, or say, let's say, 25, 25, 50. Because, in fact, this scoreboard is to promote policies. So the way to, it's a political way to take into account that consideration, giving a more important weight to policies. But you are more bottom-up evaluators than top-down, so this is why you say that. Now, the idea of taking mainly ex-ante evaluation until 2030 as the impact value of policies, it's what we did already, but it's a mix of ex-post evaluation until 2020, plus some evaluation on ACCPs. And personally, I am a little bit lost on how Fraunhofer it's matching all these things. But at least you confirm that to have some ex-ante evaluation in our policy scoreboard, it's a good idea and it's something that I get in mind. Thank you. Sam, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm not against having a higher weight for policy, particularly. I just like that.
I miss your first.
I'm not against Stefan's recommendation of having. Well, I'm
not against. Mean you are pro.
Well, I just like the thing I liked about the ODYSSEE-MURE one was the simplicity of it. It was very clear how the weighting was done, whereas on the ACEEE one, the weighting was different in different sectors, and the rationale was not explained particularly. So it was more about the simplicity than the actual weights. Of course, you could have a quarter, where the last 2 quarters of historic policy impact, and one is forward-looking, which is essentially what you're kind of doing. At the same time, I am nervous about both the historical impacts, the evaluation estimates, and the forward-looking estimates when you start quantifying, which is where I actually wonder whether the ACEEE approach is not a bit simpler and more straightforward, the way they're just giving marks out of 5 or whatever it is for a policy measure, than to have this very quantified approach based on numbers that, frankly, I wouldn't trust, and I don't think are particularly consistent between countries. And that's from having seen what member states report for their Article 7 obligations, their policy savings for under the Energy Efficiency Directive, and then seeing what's in their NECPs. It's a mixture of sort of wishful thinking and some policy and some actual policy measures, many of which aren't actually funded properly. And so it's, I think if you look forward, yes, you can say, well, you've got ambition or stated ambition, but and it kind of all is where it comes into the communications part, really, is, you know, what are you trying to achieve with your scorecard? And this is perhaps where putting everything together into one winner, while it's something that is more newsworthy, it becomes a bit more problematic. And having an Olympics where you've got your level winners, your progress winners, your policy winners is maybe perhaps something that makes more sense.
The thing, I don't know if you have time to speak on communication issue, but to answer to that question, if you have 3 scoreboards with the same name, it will give confusion. So this is why we choose to have a combined scoreboard. But if you have a researcher, and I will show you some result, we have the ranking per type of scoreboard. So I think last, because the time is running, if you want to play about the score.
Yeah, we could also think about ODYSSEE-MURE is about evaluation, right? So that's about the past, looking what happened in the past. So is it logical to say anything about the future at all, other than targets? I mean, countries have put targets on absolute energy use, for example. So that's one thing that came to mind.
So it's taken into account in that respect, in our policy impact evaluation, we take into account NECP, so let's say impact in 2030 or something like that.
But did we evaluate more the past results of policies or also future ones? Okay, but I thought of this because of this discussion. Another thing is that I have been thinking about a different way of presenting the 3 components of the scoreboard, because every scoreboard is one-dimensional. You get one number and one-dimensional ranking. and I've been inspired by, what's his name? The Swedish people who know him, Hans Rosling, I believe. What's his name again? Hans. Well, he has some very interesting visualizations of statistics. So, for example, you could make a chart with one axis is the level, the other axis is the trend, and for example, the color of a country indicates the quality of the policies.
It's like a rainbow.
It is like a chart with dots.
Hundreds of colors in the chart. And, I think this is the second part about communication in that respect. Just a small word, please.
About the policy time period. Was there also a beginning year after which the policies are considered? There are also long-term policies included.
It's 2010 also for policies.
There's also a period. So what happens with the long-running policies which are still producing new savings? So if that's not included, then it leads to speculative behavior with the project teams that they change the times when these policies were started to just report the latest phase.
No, so there is of course you have a lot of questions like that. We don't, if we take 2010, it's something that I will show you for the result. For example, the ETS in Germany deliver at the beginning and not now. So if you take into account 2010, the impact of ETS in industry in Germany, it's more or less zero. It works better before. So it has an impact also, this date. But it's something that we can discuss internally. I stop here, my friend, and so it's time to Jean-Sébastien to organize the vote. I don't know how it works. So you have a mobile file.
Okay, so if you have a Wi-Fi connection, you can go to Slido, and otherwise we will raise hand and count the hands. That's robust technology that also works well. But for the ones online, they can vote with Slido because we cannot see them. So we have to adapt to make it possible for everyone to vote.
Consider that they are like me; they don't know nothing.
Yeah. So you enter in your browser. You enter. You don't see anything here. Okay.
Do you know this application?
So you go in your browser, you put slido.com or even slide.do, make it as well. And then you just enter after you have a home page and you should see a hashtag. You just put the number after the hashtag and you will see I have to open the question. So for the moment you see waiting is not open, I guess, or something like that. Yes, but
are you more or less ready for those we want to play?
But okay.
Are you ready? Yeah.
No, I found a way that it stays here and I
Okay, so we have two simple questions.
Okay, so the first question, so for the ones who who cannot connect, the first question is at world level, what is the most energy efficient country? And I will tell countries and you just raise your hand if you think that's the winner. So I tell them once first quick so that you know all the countries and then you can pick up the ones you are.
Primary or final? No, energy efficiency at the final demand level.
Globally.
Taking into account electricity saving in the transformation sector.
Okay, so
it's a game, Sam.
So for the ones who want to raise their hand, the choice are United States, Germany, Japan, Sweden, France, and Brazil. So I make it slow now. So United States, anyone voting for United States? Germany? No one. Japan? 3. Okay, I will note so that we can add to the.
It's all sectors.
Sweden? 2. France? 1.
You vote for Sweden or for France?
France.
I think
Okay, and Brazil. Brazil too. Okay. So, and if I take the ones who have voted online, we have 0 for US, 0 for Germany, 4 for Japan, so +4. That's okay. So I remove the double counting, so that makes 6 in total. That makes 6 for Japan. Sweden should make 2 + 2. That makes 4. France 1 + 1. That makes 2. And Brazil 2 + 2, that makes 4. So overall, the expert in the room and online would say that Japan is the best, and that's the first result. And then there is, we make the second question.
Can you see on the result of the
No, because I cannot on that share the PowerPoint, and I don't want to touch that. Okay. I don't know how to do it. That's control, so that's blocked.
Second question.
Sorry? No, we don't have the time, so. There is a second question, and then you will know. The second question is.
It's a way to keep you on the room.
So the second question is focus on Europe and industry, and that's more or less the same. In Europe, what country has the most energy efficient industry? So if you have it online, normally you should see the question now. For the ones who cannot vote online, the countries very quickly that we suggest: Italy, Denmark, Germany, UK, France, and Sweden. Now more slowly, Italy. Anyone vote for Italy? No. Okay, not popular. Denmark. Okay, 2 for Denmark. UK. 1. France. France, no one. Okay. And Sweden. Okay, sorry. And okay, so Sweden, I will make after. So okay, Germany, sorry. So 1 for Germany. France, no one. Okay, and Sweden, 1. Okay. So if I add from online, that's quite sharp. That's 5 out of 10. 5 for Denmark. So that makes 7 in total. And 1 for UK, +1 for UK, and +4 for Sweden. So we have first Denmark with 7, and then Sweden. So Scandinavian first.
Scandinavian first.
Okay, and I close that. Oops, sorry.
Okay, so you are expert, and you can see that experts have different views. Tu peux mettre la deuxième présentation? So the winner is.
Okay.
So I need my glasses. So I know the winner, but I need glasses at least. Okay. Okay, this is the ACEEE scoreboard for all the country. And the winner is France. What is interesting? Yeah, what is interesting, it's the 5 top countries are more or less in Europe. So this is a strong message for non-European countries that the best, let's say, practice on efficiency is in Europe. And if you go in detail, for example, what was the result? It was Japan first? Yes. So Japan is number 6 or 7. So even Spain is before. So it's ACEEE. So France, UK, Germany, Netherlands, Italy, Spain, Japan, Taiwan, China, and US is number 10. Okay. So I think this is an important message that the most effective countries are mainly Europeans. There is a dynamic because they have a score every year, and Netherlands gets some points. So you have a good dynamic, Netherlands. And Egypt, it's a new country in the scoreboard. Now for Europe, it's more, let's say, more different. In fact, I should have asked that question, but so the winner is in fact the upper value on it's green. It's Switzerland, Ireland. So the 5 first countries are Estonia, and you have I don't remember. I think Romania. Now it's more or less here, and you mentioned that we want to have the result by type of score. So if I have the score for all sectors, it's Lithuania, Spain, Denmark, etc. If it's only trends, it's Greece, Luxembourg, Romania, and policy, it's Estonia, France, Ireland, etc. So the second message, depending on the type of scoring, you have different ranking. And then when you make the overall, the first one, it's level trend. And you see that there are many small countries in levels. So the message is different according to the country. And in fact, the championship is Switzerland, and I will not go in detail in the presentation. I have asked Switzerland why they believe they are so good. They are new in the Odyssee-MURE, so I don't know if it's an impact on the way they set up the things. And so you can see in the presentation why Ireland and Switzerland get. What is interesting, it's we try to compare the two scoreboards. And in fact, what is interesting is they are more or less coherent, because the ACEEE has only high-consuming country, and if we compare the two scoreboards, whatever the methodology, it's more or less the same ranking. And so you see, it's interesting views about that. And now I make a comparison between France and Germany. It's interesting to see that they have different impact on industry. And you see, to answer to the question, I don't give exactly, I think maybe I don't remember if I answer to your question. You know, I don't know if I have the answer for industry, but at least you can see industry. In total, France, it's 16, so we are not so good, but it's clearly not Germany, which is the first one. They are ranking 11. So for those which are voting Germany, it's, but I don't remember which are the first one. Okay, so what we propose to improve the scoreboard is to introduce something nobody speak about: fuel poverty. I think this is important, that our new policies are limit the inequalities or diminish the inequalities, and for instance, they can be more focused on fuel poverty. So maybe personally I will give a sort of bonus of some policies which are dedicated to fuel poverty, instead to have a general scheme. This is a personal opinion that we will debate in the next round, and we will try to introduce more sufficiency indicators in order to correct the fact that when we use consumption per square meter, for me, Romania is not sufficiency, it's fuel poverty. So it's different approach. We'll develop the graphic, making like I think you mentioned, Sam, trying to make some dynamic and some nice web graph. We try to have a longitudinal analysis to compare the evolution of the scoreboard. For example, to see if the Eastern country will get better and better, or if its France will collapse next scoreboard. I know that we will be again first, because we have a lot of improvement in transportation for different reasons in terms of statistics, and we have two strong policies that doesn't exist, like the obligation in service sector which will make the difference. So I expect that France will still continue to be in a good place, but I don't know for the other one. So question for round table 2, but we have only 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Is okay, Stephanie. Okay, so the idea was to discuss how to communicate this scoreboard. Actually, it's in the website of the ECEE. I didn't succeed to, I proposed that scoring to the commission, to the DG Energy, and obviously they refuse. They say, okay, you have a project, Odyssey is good, it's good enough, but we will not take the responsibility, which is damage because they can tweet something. Okay, so just maybe one word, 1 minute, let's say, if you have one word on this communication aspect, and Leah, because I know you like this type of, you are more on behavioral or communication aspect. First, do you like it?
Yeah, very much. Yeah, one word. That's to prove my communication skills, of course. No, I think much has been said already. So the thing in communication is always what do you want to achieve, and I think many of the debate here as well has been about what is behind it. So having this one aggregated score is nice as a kind of stopping power, and I really like this map of Europe with the colors. I think that works because that attracts people. But then you need to have a system that people that want to compare things easily find their way into it. And I know Sam already compared with the Olympics, but I would rather compare it with the Tour de France because we're in France. Huh? So you also have the yellow jersey and the polka dot jersey, and those are different classifications, but they are important and dependent on who you are, you're interested in the mountains or in the overall score. So I think that's an important one.
So the answer is very simple. There is a special facilities in the ODYSSEE-MURE website, and you can play with the scoreboard as you wish. So to know which is the best in transportation in the past, you can see all the things. So using the ODYSSEE-MURE scoreboard facilities, you can have all this information. Leah, your final words, so you should be.
Although the tool at the end, the results are very aggregated, yet it's very transparent and well documented. So that increases the credibility and understandability if somebody wants to really see why the results are like they are. And that is something very important that the national teams should do, that they should really look into the ranking of their countries and the reasons why they rank high or low or wherever. And they should communicate this nationally also to the government and policymakers, because they don't want to be surprised. When they come to this European forum or wherever and they see the results, they will be rather upset if they don't know that in advance and they are not being prepped about this. So I'm sure that you can find there's different fora to disseminate this, but it's very important also what happens at the national level, that we really look into the results.
But in fact, when we propose to have a national report, it's one way to display the scoreboard. You can go.
No, I was saying that there is a reception after the next plenary, so you can go on the discussion. Okay. I'm very sorry, but I would strongly encourage you to move to the plenary session.
Thank you for your advice. I hope
you will.